Just a quick special guest here, Michael Elliott, who is the president and CEO of the ONE, O-N-E, campaign, as in one.org. Previously was the editor of Time Magazine International Edition, deputy managing editor of Time Magazine prior to ONE, also a columnist on the global economy for Fortune Magazine. And Michael, and welcome to the program, first of all.
I delight to be with you.
It's great to have you with us. Tell us about ONE. Is this the program that Bono or...
Exactly.
Okay.
So this is the campaigning organization that Bono is the co-founder of. So we're an advocacy and campaigning body that works with governments around the world to make sure that resources continue to flow to fight extreme poverty and preventable disease, particularly in Africa. So we lobby in the U.S. and the U.K., all over Europe and elsewhere. We make sure that money continues to go to fight poverty, to fight AIDS, TB, malaria. And we're backed up by an army of 4 million people around the world who sign letters, sign petitions, call their congressmen, what have you.
Who go to one.org and find out what you're up to. AIDS, HIV, tuberculosis, malaria, these conditions don't exist in a vacuum. I've spent a fair amount of time in the third world. I've done international relief work for 38 years, and there does seem to be a fairly, at least in my mind, a fairly clear association between poverty and these things. And not just individual poverty, national poverty as well, the lack of infrastructure, the lack of healthcare infrastructure, the lack of sanitary infrastructure, things like that. What first of all, would you agree or disagree with that comment? And secondly, in either case, what are the solutions in your mind?
Oh, I 100% agree with what you've just said. And I think one of the key solutions is to recognize that many of the parts of the world that look as if they're really poor are sitting on top of resources that could make them very, very rich. You've got some of the poorest people in the world sitting on top of oil, gas, mineral resources, what have you. And if those resources could just be freed up and used for the benefit of people so that they built schools and hospitals and roads rather than be kind of siphoned away into the pockets of corrupt officials, everyone would be better off. And that was one of the key things that Bono was talking about when he was here in New York, where I'm talking to.
But do we really, given the reality of climate change, if we're talking to for example, a lot of the work that I've done recently has been in northern South Sudan, around the Darfur area, Gok Machar. We actually did our show for a week from this little town of 7,000 people that's now 47,000 people because of Darfurian refugees. And they're finding oil along the northern border of South Sudan, and so North Sudan, or Sudan, Mr. Bashir's government, the war criminal, has been moving his border south. He's been bringing his soldiers in.
Sure.
The Chinese are buying up these oil lots. The Norwegians are helping them meter this stuff. And the Dinka people are, by and large, caught in the middle, and they're being slaughtered. And wouldn't it be, rather than helping with the development of oil, which is what the Chinese and the Norwegians would say that they're doing, wouldn't it be better to be going in and leapfrogging over this 19th century energy source and do, as I know a number of good NGOs are doing very aggressively, and I've seen personally in India, for example, in rural India, going in and solarizing villages that have never had electricity before. Go directly from no electricity to solar panels for the community, and pumps, wells. In Gok Machar, they have one pump, one well. This is kind of high desert land. And the women run this thing 24/7. It's got a hand crank on it. If they simply had a good solar panel and a pump on that thing, people, they get a heck of a lot more water out of it, if nothing else. What are your thoughts on that?
About 8 different separate thoughts. I mean, first of all, you're absolutely right. You're 100% right that somewhere like Africa, but the developing world generally, definitely needs to develop its renewable resources, which have barely been scratched in many places, so that energy can be provided as cleanly as possible. If we're going to power Africa, something that we're completely committed to at the One campaign, then we have to do it in a better way than we powered Western Europe and North America, and that means doing it as cleanly as possible. Now, in some parts of the developing world, that won't be possible solely by renewables, and we can't wait for renewable technology to come online. And don't forget, what we're looking for here when we talk about power in Africa is not just kind of a few lights. What we're looking for is an economic transformation. People need jobs. people need jobs, and that means they need factories, they need places where people can work. But you're entirely right that the whole renewable field needs to be kind of massively developed.
Well, and the other problem with oil is what we saw in Nigeria, for example. Widespread corruption, huge environmental devastation.
So the question is, what can one do to address that?
Yes.
And that's really where the rubber meets the road, and that's what Bono was talking about when he was here in New York yesterday. The way to tackle corruption is transparency. There's a vaccine for corruption, and it's transparency, and it's making sure that the oil, gas, and extractive companies publish exactly what they pay for the right to take out extractive, so that civil society organizers, you know them, I know them, in the developing world can see that data, follow the money, and hold people to account.
Why not call for nationalization like Norway and Venezuela have done?
For making sure that it's spent in the right way. And the kind of great tragedy of the transparency revolution right now is that the U.S. was in the lead on this a couple of years ago with tremendous legislation that we played a key role in getting passed, the Cardin-Lugar Amendment, and that legislation is now stalled because the American Petroleum Institute brought a lawsuit against the SEC, and the SEC has had to go back and rewrite the rules. So Bono was essentially saying yesterday, look, there's a transparency revolution going on that makes sure that money is going to be spent so that it really benefits people. Everyone needs to get on the same side and kind of make sure that it really happens.
But see, even the Saudi sheikhs are not going to be in favor of that any more than the corrupt Nigerian local warlords.
Well, the question is, let's start with making sure this legislation is already in place in Western Europe, okay? Mm-hmm. So any company that is quoted on the European Stock Exchange has to publish what it pays. That legislation is present in the U.S., the SEC made rules, and a lawsuit delayed the rules. So, in other words, like BP and Shell, which are European-based companies, they have to comply with this. ExxonMobil doesn't? We have to create a global standard on this, and we can do so. And you know what? We can get the Saudi sheikhs on side. Yeah, I'm with you. Okay. Thank you very much. Michael Elliott, President and CEO of the One Campaign, one.one.org is the website. Thank you, Michael.